Good evening, and thank you for being a part of our Tuxes and Tales Gala. My name's Alyssa Gray, and I am the Vice President of Outreach at the Kentucky Humane Society. I'm thrilled to be able to share some of the amazing work and miracles performed every day by our incredible staff. Each year, thousands of animals with nowhere else to go come to the Kentucky Humane Society. The most fragile of these animals rely on you. Some are suffering from heartbreaking neglect or abuse. Hundreds are in urgent need of life-saving medical care. Others require behavior rehabilitation to learn that people can be kind. And many are injured or displaced victims of natural disasters. All of these innocent animals are scared, alone, and in desperate need of someone to save them, someone like you. For our most vulnerable cats, dogs, and horses, we have the Tender Loving Care Fund, or TLC. It provides the resources for medical and behavioral care for hundreds of suffering, at-risk animals each year. Our TLC fund is the difference between life and death for these special souls, and its funding comes from the generous donations that you make tonight. By donating tonight, you give these dogs, cats, and horses the second chance they so desperately need and deserve. By donating tonight, you save them.
Last December, tornadoes devastated western Kentucky, leaving 76 people dead and thousands without homes. It was the worst natural disaster in Kentucky history, and when people suffer, so do the animals. KHS immediately went to work to help shelters and animals in the region. We sent in pet food, veterinary supplies, and financial aid. We turned our Sam Swope Pet Treatment and Life-Saving Center, our main campus, into an emergency hub for the region's animals. Within days, we helped evacuate 600 animals who had been in shelters before the storms, making space for the shelters to take in pets lost by the tornadoes and reunite them with their families. When the animals arrived at our emergency hub, we worked round the clock to prepare them for transport to shelters with space for them. This included more than 100 cats and kittens that we had evacuated from shelters in the hardest hit counties, including Graves, Hopkins, Muhlenberg, and Marion. When they arrived at main campus, our veterinary team examined each one to make sure they could travel safely outside the region. Then, at the break of dawn 4 days after the tornadoes, we transported them to the airport and loaded them onto a private plane chartered by the ASPCA. The cats' destination? A shelter in Massachusetts where families waited eagerly to adopt them. As the plane took off into the early morning sky, KHS and ASPCA staff, and even the airport employees, broke into tears and cheered. These cats and kittens were on their way to finding new homes, and Kentucky shelters now had room to help animals lost or injured by the storms. Another example of the life-saving power of our TLC fund is a sweet, tiny horse named Liberty. When we rescued Liberty last March, she was a yearling, suffering from one of the worst neglect cases we had ever seen. She was born in a 10 by 10 stall, a dark and lonely prison she had never left. The tiny horse was living on a filthy, 2-foot mound of manure and hay, with no clean place to rest. She had never met other horses, felt the touch of a kind person, or enjoyed fresh air. Her coat was rough from intestinal parasites, and clumps of matted hair stuck to her body. Her hooves had never been trimmed and curled up so severely that it was painful for her to walk. When we approached her stall, Liberty reached toward us desperate for contact, but when we opened the stall door, Liberty recoiled in terror. To leave her stall, she would have to jump from the shelf of compacted manure she'd lived on her whole life to the solid ground below, something she had never seen. With patience and compassion, we helped Liberty take that leap of faith and brought her to Willow Hope Farm. We administered vaccines and antibiotics to make her healthy and smooth her coat. We trimmed her hooves so she could walk and provided dental care so she could chew her food. We taught her to lead and took her for walks to strengthen her legs. When it was time for Liberty to meet other horses, she didn't know what to do. She started to run and then nervously retreated, She approached other horses, but didn't know how to make friends. We brought in older horses to help socialize Liberty, and it worked. Liberty became part of the herd, running in the pasture and eating with the other horses. For the first time in her life, she was the little horse she was meant to be. In June, Liberty's story became a fairy tale. She was not only adopted by a wonderful family, she was taken home to be a companion and best friends to another sweet miniature horse. Now, Liberty will never be alone again. And finally, we want to leave you with our sweet friend, Amos. Amos arrived at KHS severely emaciated and in urgent need of medical attention. He was just skin and bones with every rib showing. Our veterinary team ran every medical test in the book to find out what was wrong, but they were inconclusive. That didn't stop us from doing everything we could to save this sweet elderly boxer mix. We hydrated him with IV fluids, provided nutritional supplements to strengthen his weakened body, and showered him with love and care. Amos refused canned and dried dog food, so the shelter staff kicked into action. Every 2 hours, they offered Amos food that no dog could refuse, taking turns feeding him home-cooked meals and delicacies like steak, mac and cheese, and hamburger, which he devoured like a king. Still, Amos failed to gain weight, but he remained in good spirits. He loved being pampered by the team and enjoyed the bustle of the shelter. Ethan came by for visits to cheer him on, and staff stopped in to pet him. One morning, we even took him to watch a beautiful sunrise. Amos spent a particularly enjoyable day soaking in the sunshine and playing with another dog, Travolta, found at the brink of death from starvation. For dinner, Amos joyfully gobbled down an Arby's double beef and cheddar sandwich as our staff cuddled him and told him what a good boy he was. Unknown to us, this would be Amos's final meal. The next day, he could no longer stand, and Amos let us know that it was time for him to go. We gave him medicine for pain and nausea, said tearful goodbyes, and held him as he passed on to the next world. We are heartbroken by his loss, but grateful that our TLC fund let us do everything we could for him to make sure his last days were filled with pure comfort and joy. He made so many friends and knew nothing but kindness during his time at KHS. Rest easy, sweet Amos. We'll see you on the other side. We could tell you stories all night about the animals we are so grateful to have been able to help through our TLC fund, some uplifting and others heartbreaking. What is important is that the lives of every single one of these animals matters, and we will always do everything in our power to save each one of them. Tonight, we ask you to join us in this mission, and together we can continue to save the lives of innocent animals through tender, loving care.